Welcome, everybody. Super excited today. Got a guest, flew in all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona. I mean, it's not that far of a flight, but appreciate him being here nonetheless. Nick Homer, Touchstone Wealth. You know, you guys you have offices here in California as well as Arizona. I've personally known you for close to 20 years. You handle my personal finances as well as the finances of a lot of other people that I put you in contact with over the years. So super excited to have you here today. I mean, there's so much change in every industry, across the country. But right now, with the advancement of AI and, with everything going on, on the political side of things with tariffs, and now we're starting to see tech layoffs, right? I mean, Amazon, I think just let go of 30,000 people or something like that. But then also like their profit, is through the roof.
Yep.
Right. So a lot of stuff to unpack and digest here. I mean, I know houses, but I certainly don't know finances. So that's why I've partnered with Nick many, many years ago, and happy to have you here today.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, buddy.
Thank you.
So I want to jump in, kind of the first thing is I want people to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So tell me kind of, what your path was into the financial space, kind of, where you got your start and where you are today.
Yeah. I think it was a default. I was going to San Jose City and realized I didn't want to be working retail, and I wasn't necessarily a student, to say the least. So I got called by a recruiter, by a firm, and sounded good, and I just stuck with it and never looked back. And so a lot of the education and knowledge has come, from on-the-job training and credentials along the way. But I think why I'm still in it and passionate about what we do is, my parents were the default plan. My dad had a very successful, actually, real estate property management company. And when I was born, it all went to crap. And, we survived on newspaper routes. And a lot of it, we always joke, my dad is kind of Mr. Magoo. He was the smartest, but kind of dumbest guy at the same time as far as common sense. And he tried to represent himself a lot. And that was the downfall is I think if he would have sought advice, tax, legal, or professional, whatever it was, we wouldn't have been impacted as much. So,
Gotcha.
I'm married, 2 kids, been doing this almost 25 years now.
Yeah.
And so that's me. And we steward, between me and my team, probably close to $500 million of clients' money, and continuing to grow.
Okay. So. And then, maybe you can explain too, for the people that are watching or listening. So are you part of a big firm or a boutique firm?
Sure.
How are you guys positioned, and what is the benefit of that to your clients?
Yeah. Great question. So we're with a national broker dealer. Our broker dealer is MML, and Touchstone Wealth is, I would say, the boutiqueness of advisors that have like-minded process and areas of focus. And so we are basically have the customization to work with clients however we want to engage with them.
Okay. And what does that mean? Like in terms of what type of, financial vehicles or things, do you guys advise and put your clients into?
Yeah. So it basically means we have the market to work with. So we're not restricted in any way as long as it's, vetted options on the investment side or the risk management side. We can work with whatever company or whatever fund or portfolio. Private equity, that will have to go through the vetting process with the broker dealer, but still we have ample capabilities to get clients into some very unique and exciting private equity options if they want to. But you got to be an accredited investor.
Sure.
But what it really means is there's a police behind us, meaning, a lot of trouble that we've seen, or we were just talking about, is when you have advisors that are just registered with the SEC, and the SEC can't, go and
everybody.
Yeah, they can't police everyone. So Bernie Madoff, big one, he was just registered with the SEC. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means there's less checks and balances. So our broker dealer, think of it as checks and balance.
Okay, perfect. And I mean, in terms of like, scope of your, your average client profile, I mean, I know you work with, small business owners as well as like large firms. I mean, so you guys really cover the gambit, right?
Yeah. So my specialty has been working with the small business owner, on how to monetize the business, and then that translates to some of the personal planning and legacy planning. My business partner, she stewards our personal wealth management. I would say our average client is household income $500,000, has probably about $500,000 of investable assets.
Gotcha.
If it's a business, we're looking at probably about $5 million of revenue, and that could be one individual or 500 employees.
Gotcha. So the first question I want to ask, and I know I come across this a lot when I'm talking to people, especially in Silicon Valley, you think everybody's super savvy and sophisticated and educated, but the reality is, a lot of people still don't plan for the future, right? Whether it's, life insurance or 401k and things like that. So my first question is, if just say I come to you and say, hey Nick, I'm 40 years old or I'm 50 years old,
yep,
and I really don't have anything invested for retirement. Where do I start? And is it too late for me to start? And what should I do? And so, my question to you is, what do you tell them?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, let's set expectations. So one, it's not too late, but also we can't have this grandiose idea that, it's magically going to happen.
Right.
So we want to set expectations and then work backwards. So, hey, what does that retirement mean? If we need 10 grand a month of income, okay, what do we need to do to work backwards to get us to that goal in 15 years or 25 years? And so, Social Security could be a big chunk of that. Maybe that covers a third. So then we got 2/3 to cover. Are we married? Does the spouse Social Security help? Is there other income we can account for? So, and then, you break it down from there. I think it's really just saying, what income, one, do we want or think we need? And then two, what's the hard line number we need to be thinking about? But, back to what I was talking with my parents, everyone will get by. There's a default plan. Like my folks was Social Security and that was it. So, were they happy? Sure. Was that the way they wanted things to happen?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I think the biggest thing is folks, sit with someone that can help consult with them on what does that actually mean from a financial independence standpoint for them, and what are those expectations, and then what do we need to do to get there, and are we willing or capable to do it? Because in that situation, a 50-year-old, you may need to be setting aside $3-4 grand a month to meet that 10 grand a month in future dollars.
Right.
Is that even doable?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
But start somewhere, right? So, okay, we can't do 4, but maybe we could start with 1,000, and then slowly, 6 months we increase it to 1,100, and then we increase it to, we get rich slow.
Yeah. and thanks for that. And it's kind of the plant a tree analogy, right? When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Second best time today.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So and I think that's the thing too. Because financial literacy, at least when I was going to school, wasn't taught in school.
Yep.
Right.
Still's not.
Yeah. And it's still not. And it's definitely a shame. And, so then my next question is, because, if I'm scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, every third or fifth post is some sort of, get rich quick, invest in crypto or trade like the senators, or, do all of that stuff. And so with AI being so prevalent, it's moving at light speed right now.
Sure.
Every week something new comes out, and I know there's a lot of people that think, well, I can use a Chat GPT or a Gemini or Gronk or something to help me with my investing and retirement planning. What is it that you say to them, why it still makes sense to retain, a financial advisor versus them trying to do it themselves?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is we are our own worst enemy, right? So, the biggest value I think we bring to clients is that sense of reason and separating emotions from the money and economic decisions. So when you're working with AI or ChatGPT, you can make the outcome you want, right? Like they're gonna feed off of what you give it, and then it's gonna turn around and give it. And a lot of it's gonna be black and white type of responses, not the gray area. And so I think the biggest thing that's one is we are our own worst enemy. And I'm speaking for myself. I personally will look at things differently with my own money than sometimes with the way I would look at it with clients, and that's because you're emotionally attached. Yeah. But two, I think is that may be great for investment management, or maybe it's not. We don't know. It's still an unknown. But there's so many other dynamics that go into a healthy financial household or picture, or being financially independent. What's the implications on taxes if we do this? What's the risk management we need to be planning for? And I got my RSUs, and Apple is killing it, and everything would probably say hold it, but do I really want to hold it? Can I emotionally withstand it? And so I think it's all the other aspects outside of investment management that is the need for an advisor. And, I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a great point, it's the emotional component, right? Yeah. And I think that, people get trapped, sometimes thinking about the quick buck or what's trending, sure. and they don't have that North Star, for lack of a better term, to kind of keep them on the right path for the long term.
Absolutely.
And it's funny. So my daughter Bella turned 21 recently, and she had a big party, and I was over there before she kicked me out. And I'm sitting around, and there's about six guys her age, so 20, 21, 22, 23. Yep. And they're sitting around, they're asking me okay, what financial advice, would you give us, or would you have given yourself when you were our age? And I told them, obviously, one, just get into the market, right? Mm-hmm. And, the sooner you start investing with compound interest, the rule of 7, yep. And then the second thing I told them, once you invest, like into a 401k or something like that, never pull the money out.
Sure.
And use a financial planner. And then they asked me, they're like, well, what about day trading? And what about crypto? And the advice that I gave them, and I want to kind of vet it with you too, is I told them, hey, it's fine to kind of play in those areas, yep. but still take, 85% or 90% of the income that you're going to invest and go the traditional path. And then if you want to take 10% and, split it between crypto or day trading, just so you can try it out, go for it. But I think, those kids get caught up, that TikTok algorithm hits them, and they think everybody's an influencer and everybody's going to make money quick. And so I wanted to get your take on that, kind of playing in those, maybe less known areas on their own.
Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with, sure, scratch the itch. We always tell clients, look, if you want to still have the itch, do so. I'm not trying to take that away. What we're trying to do is, though, be the backstop. So the safe money, or hey, with this, we know we can get you to where you need to go. And then everything else, if you want to, day trade or have at it, go for it. But at some point, it's going to come to roost. You're either going to kill it and think you're the greatest genius, or it's going to go the opposite way, or somewhere in the middle. Most of the time it's somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And I want that, right? Is people then realize, oh, it's not as easy.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
or man, I really screwed up on these couple of things, because typically there's 4 things you got to get right, and you don't get them all 4. You got to know when to buy, when to sell, when to buy, or when to get back in, and then when to sell again, right? And so doing it yourself, totally fine. But again, I would say it's the money that you're not too concerned with. Right. Because you don't know what you don't know, mm-hmm. And I always say in up markets, which sure there's been volatility, but we're still in some tremendous growth and probably will continue. It's easy for people to make money. It's hard when the markets are sideways, or like we saw in 08 and 09 when we first started getting to know each other. That. You weren't seeing people say, oh man, I'm buying up houses now, or, I'm doing my own trading. There was pure panic, and unfortunately fortunes lost. And mm-hmm. a lot of it was because, they had their blinders on, and they didn't have someone kind of guiding them to say, hey, maybe we hold and let the weather, pass, and which it did. But, you're not going to avoid losses for the most part. Mm-hmm. Especially if we're in the market. That the idea is how can we weather it and then position ourselves to get it back. So, those young individuals, I see it even with older individuals, it's, hey, go have at it, but I promise you there's some value we can bring that you're not seeing. And, we always tell clients, look, if you don't feel we're providing the value for our consulting or for what we're doing, then fine. Go, there's plenty of options out there. Go move on, and there's no hard feelings. But I think for most people, they see that value, but they have to go through the process and actually see it over. We tend to see it about the past year 3 or 4 that now they're like, oh wow, I'm starting to see sense. So anyways, hopefully that helped answer.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, and it's kind of like there's some parallels in real estate as well, because to gain long-term wealth, it's not sexy.
No.
It's kind of slow and boring, right? You buy the house, you live in it for 13 years, or you invest in your 401k every month. You don't look at it for 13 or 15 years, or, one, because your agent's doing that for you, or your financial planner's kind of managing that. And then you look, okay, well then what are we gonna do for the next decade? And how do we adjust based on lifestyle? Is your family growing, or is your salary increase? Can you afford to put more money in? And really, that's what I was trying to tell those kids is like, it's not sexy, but what a feeling when you're 65 and you've got 2 or 4 million in your retirement account, and you're able to get 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 a month to live on tax-free for the rest of your life. And when you graduate up to to wherever you're going, you get to, the rest of that money gets to be handed down to your kids, and you're actually creating generational wealth.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And none of it was done on TikTok or Instagram or, so, along those lines though, with everything going on with tariffs or threat of tariffs, with the political climate, both here in the United States and across the globe, what are your predictions for 2026 in terms of like stock market, or where you see potential, what sectors of potential growth do you see?
Sure.
What's the landscape look like next year?
Yeah. Well, that's a loaded question, but
how far out did your crystal ball go?
Yeah, that's right. Look, who knows, but I think that there are some worries out there in the economy, right? AI potentially replacing some jobs, but at the same token, those companies are going to see some profit. So what impact does that have? But, you see some underlying things like interest rates coming down. Inflation is still there, but it's at some point it hopefully will mellow out. Homes are going to, people are starting to transition and get off the sidelines. So for next year and probably the next few years out, there'd be bumps along the way, but we're going to see some growth. I mean,
overall,
the industries that are really a big topic that they're not being traded on the markets because they're not publicly traded companies, but a lot of them are trade companies that are rebuilding the data centers for all the TikTok and all the algorithm and the crypto mining that needs to happen. And so, as a country, we need to be able to not only create that, but also back up the energy that we're going to need to sustain our current society and where it's going to go. And so you add that plus the Mag 7 and all the big companies out there, we'll probably see some good growth next year. Is it going to be smooth and easy? Probably not, especially with the political climates that we have in the country. But at the end of the day, we're very, very bullish on what the next decade looks like. And there's a lot of people that think that we're at that next wave of an industrial revolution, for lack of better words, the technology that's here today is only going to be so much more down the road, and what does that mean for us as a society? And so I'm excited, and then you add that to like we were talking about the legacy. You have the most wealth transferring from one generation to the next over the next 10, 15 years that we've never seen before. So what does that mean? Like, there's going to be this enormous influx of transition of money, and also I think opportunity for us as a country, especially in the trades. And trades, you can't be replaced by AI, right? And so and then those like out in Phoenix or even here in the Bay Area, but a lot in the Midwest and Southwest, them building these centers, that also feeds the local economy, right? That, you know, hotels are filled with all the labor, and then there's pop-up little manufacturing shops that need to come in to support those data centers. So anyways, I think it's going to be some positive next year, but you know, the volatility is definitely going to be there. And I think if we understand that, you know, we're in it for the long term, we're going to reap the benefits if we can stay with the game plan. So
yeah, no, I completely agree with your comment about trades, right? Like I was talking to my son recently, he's 19, and I'm like, you need to go into HVAC, right? Or, you know, or electrical, because I think the data center demand and infrastructure build out to support that, I think that's going to carry those trades for the next decade and beyond.
Yeah. I mean, you add roads, you add bridges, you add all that other stuff too. And I mean, it's you know, I think there's an exciting moment, even though it's scary on the other side, you know, for those that are in the fields that are subject to be replaced by AI, right? But so all in all, you know, we're a capitalist society. So, you know, and, you know, the millennials are having more kids at a higher rate than the baby boom generation was as well. As a whole, we're down as a birth rate, but when you take that generational, they're having more kids at a higher rate than the baby boom, and they're bigger than the baby boom generation. And so you take that multiplier of just, you know, you're a parent, I'm a parent, how much you have to just spend on raising kids, you know, that goes back into the economy too. So, I'm very optimistic about where things are going.
Awesome. I think that's great. I mean, it's before we wrap up, I mean, a couple of things I wanted to say. You know, I mentioned at the top of this that, you know, you came all the way from Scottsdale, but the reality is, I mean, you still very much have a footprint here in California, as well as Arizona. And I know you have clients kind of all over the, you know, the United States, but you know, you're out here quite a bit. And so if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Email, phone call. I'm old school. I like talking to people. Perfect. So, you know, texts are kind of our enemy because they can't be regulated by our industry. But at this, whatever someone wants to reach out, you know, they'll be contacted for sure. Okay.
And then last little nugget of advice or something you want to leave the listeners or the audience with, you know, little nugget.
You know, I think, I don't know if we spoke about it the last time I was on it, but you know, we're here in Silicon Valley. Speaking of AI, that there's so many companies out here that your clients or people listening are probably that are sitting on these RSUs or options that they have available. And, you know, I think a lot of people feel stuck. Like, I don't want to sell, one, for taxes, and two, I think it's a good hold to hold it. Well, there's an in-between there. And so I think a lot of folks are uneducated on what they can do with those positions. And they should be talking with their advisor or someone to help educate them. Meaning, you know, for example, we had a client that had a heavy exposure to Apple, had kids going to college, need for some additional income, but didn't want to sell. We could put a hedge strategy in place, and it generated over like $100,000 of extra income for him to help offset some of those expenses. So
he didn't have to give up his RSUs. He still held on to those, just leveraged against them.
You basically just create like a buffer on the high end and on the low end, and you're making money, you know, when people either exercise or expire those puts or options. So it's a nice strategy, and I think it's one that isn't talked enough about out here in the Bay Area, especially with all these people sitting on a lot of exposure with NVIDIA, Apple, Google, Facebook, you know, you name it.
Okay, so if you have RSUs and you're worried about, you know, selling them and paying taxes, or you're worried about, you know, not having enough money while you hold on to them, there's a strategy kind of in the interim that you can kind of hedge your bets.
Absolutely.
And actually generate some income off of that without having to cash out your position.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Correct.
All right. Well, we'll definitely get that out there as well. Nick, I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Appreciate it.